covered. You said, and I can't thank you enough. You said you'd be here. By golly, you are.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2018 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are live from McGillivray Speedway, 30th and High School, in a beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. And if you come to town for any reason, I don't care if it's to see the Christmas lights or just go shopping, you got to come to McGillivrays here in Speedway. They got great service, great food, and of course the adult beverages are ice cold. Tonight's show is presented as always by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Verizon IndyCar Series, and HVRA. In case nobody noticed it, and I certainly didn't, but I am remiss in this. On Saturday, Mike from Grand King Shops had a birthday, so I want to say happy birthday to Mike. And I got word today that John Noggle is not doing well. His heart problems, I guess, are continuing. He's not doing very well, although his wife said today he was a little better. But that's not good news to hear. And for those of you who didn't get an email from me or a copy of anything, it was just announced that Jordan King is to leave Ed Carpenter Racing. He's looking for a full-time ride in 2019. And it should be announced, I think, very shortly that coming to drive for Ed Carpenter Racing is going to be Ed Jones. I think he's going to run the street and road courses, and then they're going to have a third car for him for the 500. And if you have a dental problem, I know everybody looks forward to seeing the dentist. Well, I've got a high recommendation for the Indy Dental Group. Dr. Jack Miller and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis, have a phenomenal practice. The people are super deluxe. If you want to make an appointment, the number is 317-846-6125. And because the season is over, doesn't mean everybody shut down and gone on vacation. If you want to know what's going on, I highly recommend tracksideonline.com. Just go log on and sign up. I think it's only like $24, $25 a year. And you get all the information, all the PR from teams and what they're doing, where they're doing it, and how often. And plus they cover the Road to Indy program. So go to Trackside Online and sign up. Next month, early in the month, 7th to the 11th of November, is a Christmas gift and hobby show. I have 2 pair of tickets. If anybody's interested in the program's over, come up and see me. And the speaker series at the Grand King Shops, open mic night, will be the 27th of October. The door opens at 5:30. Scheduled guests are Johnny Parsons, Steve Stapp, Gary Irwin, some guy, what's his name? John Martin. Eldon Rasmussen, if his driver will bring him, and Roy Carruthers and several other drivers and owners. So if you can get over there to the Grand King Shops, weenies and brats will be provided. I don't know by whom or to whom, but we provide. It's the 27th of October. Doors open at 5:30 at the Grand King Shops, which is 8155 Crawfordsville Road. Tickets are $25 a person. Next speaker series event will be November the 10th. And as I have mentioned on several occasions, the Grand King has got a YouTube channel. You can go to look up Grand King. You go to youtube.com, go to look up Grand King, and you'll see some great video. Over 50 hours of interviews with drivers and various other people. Some liked Grant, some didn't, and they said so. And it's quite interesting. And you subscribe to it. There's no cost, but then YouTube does give a pittance for the number of people that get in there, and you'll see some great interviews. But if you see one coming in that I was on, you want to quick bypass that one as quickly as you can. And you remember I have mentioned the young driver driving in the quarter midget series, Ava Luttrell. Last weekend she started her feature second and finished first. And on Sunday she started first and finished second. So she is doing very, very well in her rookie season. So we are happy to hear that the Luttrell Racing team is doing well in their new season. Now, my first guess is a young gentleman that last time here I said, look, if you do what you think might happen, will you come and talk to him? He said, absolutely, and by golly, he's here. He is now the youngest owner in the IndyCar Series history, and he has a pretty good driver he's dragging along with him. He's done quite well. He finished runner-up in the Indy Lights Series, and it is now Harding Steinbrenner Racing. Please welcome Mr. George Michael Steinbrenner. Last time you were here, you were kind of, well, maybe we'll go up, maybe we won't. But I have a feeling you had this plan all along. You just hadn't put everything together completely.
Well, we had a pretty good idea of where we were going to head, but didn't really want to make it too public because, in IndyCar racing, nothing's certain. But we had a pretty good idea, and it was just about keeping it out of the public's view until we could make the announcement our way, and fortunately we were able to do that and do it at Yankee Stadium, no less.
Gee, now, did you get free tickets to get in so you could do this?
To the stadium?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a couple of people, so.
Okay. Well, I was a little nervous. I thought I might take up a collection for you. Two guys are joining the team. Obviously, Colton Herta, who drove for you, I assume is your driver, and the other kid, Patricio O'Ward, will drive for Harding. Or is it just one team and both drivers belong to everybody?
It's a full merger. So both drivers, both Pato and Colton, will be running under the Harding Steinbrenner banner. Both entrants will be Harding Steinbrenner Racing.
You are using the technological genius of Andretti Racing, as I understand.
Yes, we have a technical alliance with Andretti Autosport next season. They'll provide engineering and some parts to help us sort of get to the level where we can compete.
Now, it seems to me that obviously yourself very dedicated to what you're doing, and the driver you've got is quite talented. Although he finished second, he still was competitive all season long, and he got his wins, not as many as he'd like, I'm sure you'd like, but showed that he can drive a car. Was his dad happy to see him make the move so early?
He definitely was. Brian was very excited, very helpful in getting Colton to the IndyCar series and in my growth as well, working for his rallycross program in 2016 and kind of helping to put the pieces together for me to also make the jump into IndyCar as well as his son. So he couldn't be happier that his son is now an 18-year-old IndyCar driver.
The team you're joining, Mike Harding, who has been a race fan and been involved in the 500 for a number of years, he's got a very successful business, but he also loves racing, has got some pretty good people for you to lean on, like Brian Barnhart, who's been a mechanic. He's been a winning mechanic. He won championship. I believe he was a crew chief on the 500 winner. He was a race director for a number of years at IndyCar, so he understands everything. He's got Al Unser Jr., a two-time winner, multiple event wins plus championships with you to help you. They got Robbie Green, who in 1 year took IMS Productions from a loser to a winner and has really built that into a phenomenal organization. So you've got some really good people around you.
I do, thankfully, and it was one of the big reasons that joining Harding Racing and making the merge made a lot of sense for us. It was Mike Harding has an uncanny ability to get really talented and well-established people to buy into what he's selling and to really want to work for him and work with him. I mean, you look, as you said, Brian Barnhart, Robbie Green, Al Unser Jr. For Christ's sakes, Al Unser Jr. is that's a big name and a big guy to have around for not only the two drivers but for the crews and for myself as well. So it's an extraordinary group of people, especially in the realm of racing, to mentor me and to learn from. I've had a lot of luck in the mentors that I've had, starting with Brian Herta and then going to Andretti and having Michael Andretti, J.F. Thorman, Rob Edwards, and then coming to Harding and having Mike Harding, Brian Barnhart, Robbie Green, Al Unser Jr. It's awesome. It's spectacular.
When you first fell in love with racing, and I know I've mentioned this, that your grandfather was here 1 year and people were astounded about what he knew about the sport and the event, because you never really heard him talk about racing. It was baseball, I'm going to win no matter what, and he did, of course. And the businesses that he had were very successful, as everyone knows, and it was. So you've got to have taken something away from what the family has done and brought it to motorsports, which is wonderful. I mean, you are coming here with a winning attitude because that's what you know. That's what you've seen.
It is, and it's something that's been bred in me my whole life, starting, again, with my grandfather, who growing up in a suburb right outside Cleveland, going to Culver Military Academy, he knew very well what the Indy 500 was and what it meant and what it still means. And so there's always been a knowledge of the Indy 500. My dad grew up a diehard racing fan, Formula One, Indy cars, drag racing especially, which he got involved with Darrell Gwynn in the NHRA program as well. So yeah, just winning tradition and an attitude that winning's the most important thing you can do in a sport. So you might as well do everything you can to make it happen.
Well, that's the whole idea. I mean, the trick I found over the years is if you have a driver that is capable of winning, the crews will bend over backwards, do everything they can to give him the vehicle with which he can win. So, and you've got two, obviously, that have shown, and they both did very well in their first and only foray into IndyCar racing. They both showed very, very well. So, you're starting off good. When does your test program commence?
I'm not privy to. We have not nailed down a specific first test date. We'll be doing, luckily with two rookie drivers, we'll be having a good amount of testing granted by IndyCar. So we're fortunate that we're not going to be. We'll have plenty of prep time before drop of green flag in St. Pete.
I have to ask. I saw this, as I mentioned to you, somewhere, and I couldn't find it. But it had a picture of the new you. What prompted this?
A lot of it was saying, I'd started growing the hair out as soon as I moved to Indy, so about almost 2.5 years now, and so
I've been trying for 27, hadn't worked.
And so yeah,
Just thought I'd mention.
And I'd done the long hair thing, and it's a lot of work. So. Just one day in New York, when I was up in New York, it was in the middle of the playoffs, I just said, you know what, I'll go back. Might as well go back to short hair. I was kind of getting tired of the maintenance, and because I have very thick hair. So add thick hair with long hair, it's a complicated duo. So
don't mention thick and long. When you walked into the clubhouse or wherever you went, did anybody say, "Who the hell is that?"
There was a lot of that. There was a lot of that on my commute up to where we sit during the games, and then a couple of the staffers, and then coming back to the shop, there was a lot of, well, who the hell is that guy? Oh, George, how are you? I like the hair.
It seems strange to a degree that you come from baseball, winning baseball, and your love, as the title of what I put on the website said, you're interested in winning the 500, not the World Series.
Yeah, I like to say the easiest way to explain it to people is baseball is my life, but racing is my passion. There's not many more things I spend time on than my love for baseball and racing, which makes March to October pretty exciting time for me. So so for me, I grew up fortunate enough to see a lot of World Series wins, and the Indy 500 was something that always captivated me. It was what, after the death of my cousin Tony Renna, it's what brought me back to IndyCar racing, the 2006 Indy 500, and so the event has always had a special place in my heart, and so winning it would be spectacular. It would be my ultimate goal.
Not strangely enough, I knew Tony, and I had Tony on the program once, and he was due here that Tuesday that he had his accident out at the Speedway. Good guy, really good young man, and a talented driver. I think he had a good future ahead of him. It's too bad. What has surprised you now that you have got your own team and you've moved up? Has anything really said, "Holy smoke, I didn't realize this"?
The funny one that I always equate to is how much a nose cone really costs. That's always whenever you tell someone, they're like, "Really?" And it's like, yeah, it's a complicated piece of machinery, even though it looks about as complicated as a bumper on a sedan. But yeah, it's the just the multiplication of everything into the IndyCar series. It took some adjusting, and thankfully, as you said earlier, having the people who have been around the sport for, in some cases, as much as 30 years plus, it helps a lot in kind of trying to understand the differences between IndyCar and Indy Lights.
And here, Indy Lights announces this big program to cut the costs and make it more affordable. And I understand. I had Jason Penix here, and he said there will be more cars. It won't be 22 or 23 like it was at one time, but they're working their way up, and things are looking good to get 15 cars or so. So that part is good, but they look to lower the price, and then you move up to where it's far more expensive. They can't lower much. And even if they did, they lower it to what, 7 million, 6 million, whatever it is. Cars are expensive, and as you are finding out, so are the parts and pieces for it.
Exactly. Yeah, there's you can add about a 6 times multiplier to everything in Indy Lights to IndyCar. So it takes some adjusting.
Have you warned your drivers that if you break it, you pay to fix it?
We haven't quite worked that out yet. I don't know if that'll be the case, but certainly a higher awareness of a higher price tag for parts. So maybe they'll be a little more careful.
They're in there to race, and both of them appear, from what I've seen in Lights, if they have an opening, they'll go for it. Now they might not be like who the hell was I thinking of? Greg Ray, who once passed somebody at Texas in the grass. He went down in the grass to pass somebody, or the 500 winner, Takuma Sato. You give him an inch and he'll take it. Now, he might put himself out, might put you out, or he'll make it. So I'm sure your guys are going to be a little more cautious.
Yeah, and that's the thing about racing in general and being a team owner. You want them to be careful out there because lives are at stake, and on the less serious side, there's a much higher cost of the parts. So, but then again, when you see a guy go for a half inch of space, then you're kind of like, I like that. It's aggression. I like that.
Well, that's how you win. You got to go out to win, and your guys are capable. How did Mr. Award get involved? I mean, he had a great year, and all of a sudden, I was surprised to see him move and come to the team where you are. That kind of surprised me a little bit.
That had a lot to do with Mike Harding's desire to expand to a 2-car program. He was interested in Steinbrenner Racing in Colton, but he wanted to kind of get the number 1 and 2 pick in the draft. And so when we came on board, it was, we want to run a 2nd car, and we want it to be Pato Award. And we were saying, that's perfect. That's Pato, obviously. Pato and Colton took Indy Lights by storm, and so to be involved with Colton for so many years, and now to have Pato and having 2 of the best drivers under 21 on the whole planet, it's great. It's perfect to have those 2 on board, and I think they'll have a lot of fun together.
They seem to race well with each other, but they seem, from what I could see, they get along. And how long you can get along with a race driver when you put the hat on, he's not your friend anymore, obviously. But do you plan that you guys will work together when the opportunity presents itself, so you can move up through the field should you be less than first and second?
That might be situational. For me, team orders have never been awesome to watch, but obviously certain situations will warrant. But I think letting those 2 guys race it out is but it'll provide the best racing.
Is winning a race as exciting to you, or more exciting than watching one of the Yankees hit a grand slam home run and win a game?
Well, for me, winning a race is a lot more exciting because there's 162 games in a baseball season, and you'll win. I mean, this year the Yankees won 100 of them, And in racing, you don't get that. You don't get that winning percentage. So it's much more. A single win is so much more exciting, I think, in racing, because of what it means, of how hard it is to achieve a single win in racing opposed to baseball. And obviously, winning an Indy 500 or championship would be more spectacular than any Yankee win in my book.
If you're looking, Mr. Steinbrenner, he's only making that up. When I saw the announcement of you getting together with Mike Harding and the Harding Group and all of the people that they have on board, I thought, you have a very good connection with Andretti Autosport. You've worked well with them. They've helped you a lot. You won a lot of races for them, with them. But I thought, the connection of putting the two of you, yourself and Mike Harding, together in a team, and using the engineering capability that Andretti Autosport brings to, was a brilliant move. I think it's smart to work that out that way, because they've obviously Andretti's got it figured out. So now the only thing that's going to be new now, and I think they'll be out testing tomorrow, is tires, and they're supposed to be doing an aero test, I thought, but it said today it's a Firestone test. So, but they do need to make a couple adjustments on the aero kit, because although they race great on street and road courses, they weren't all that spectacular here and at Pocono. So they need to fix that a little bit, which they will. Are you happy with the series and what it's doing? Only 5 ovals?
Well, it's been difficult. I'm not yet privy to the conversations that IndyCar has with venues and with teams, since I'm new. But I'm happy with the schedule. Personally, I think some new venues, some new interesting markets, and it's tough to have such a disparity between road and street and oval races. But unfortunately, they haven't come to a place where they can find an oval track that can draw and can promote and can sustain. At least not yet. I think they're out there. It's just a matter of finding them.
Well, Gateway found them. They found out how to do it, and I think that they need to get together with promoters from some of the other ovals, such as Sparta, Kentucky, Joliet, Illinois for Chicagoland, Kansas City. I mean, there are ovals that are in the Midwest, which is where their primary fan base is, and teach them what Gateway does, because they draw a crowd.
They do, and Gateway's an awesome event, and as I said, those venues are out there. They did it with Gateway. It's just a matter of finding more, which I think has proven more difficult than finding another road or street circuit.
Well, I mean, I've been told, well, look at the crowd we draw in St. Petersburg. March, cold, yeah, that makes sense. Road America, they could run ponies backwards and they'll draw a crowd. Mid-Ohio, you could run RC cars and it would draw a crowd. So I think promotion is lacking a little bit in a few instances, and I'd like to see them pick that up, make another change somehow, but that's only me, and I'm getting old, and they're going to throw me out shortly anyway. I hope nobody is yet, but it won't be long. Do you have any interest at any time in getting your own team, Steinbrenner Racing, period?
It's possible. Right now, for the future, our vision is Harding Steinbrenner Racing. We have a plan for the future, and right now we're acting that out. Obviously, anything can happen in motor racing, but right now our focus is Harding Steinbrenner, is getting these two kids out on the grid and growing a great relationship where we can keep Harding Steinbrenner going in the foreseeable future.
Well, that's not a bad plan, actually. Pretty good group of guys to work with and people to work with, so I think you certainly in my opinion, made the right choice. I think the leadership with Harding Racing is right up your alley. You don't have to go out and find them. They're there. You just join forces and off we go. Did the Harding have cars, or do you guys have to buy your own?
Race cars?
Yeah.
We have two Indy cars at the moment. We have both cars already. So the number 88 and the number 8 are in the shop right now.
Yeah. somebody might go, oops. So now you need another car in case they do that. And usually these transporters will carry two. Ours did anyway.
We do have spares as well. When Mike got the Main Street shop and Speedway, there were a lot of parts that came along with it.
Oh, really?
So it was a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, I guess. And you don't have far to go. You live in this area. You live up north.
I live up in Carmel, about 20 minutes up north.
So you can get there. Do you follow your drivers to pit fit or somewhere and work out with them?
I haven't really worked. I haven't worked out at all at pit fit. I've been, but I have not worked out. But obviously, when Colton and Pato are in town, they go to pit fit. The Harding shop has a pretty sweet gym, so
Yeah,
I generally do it there.
I see. I know I've been up to pit fit. I didn't do that. Went up there and watch and see the number of guys that are there, drivers that are working out. Did you ever walk along the walls for the record holder for various things? You notice Scott Dixon, Scott Dixon, Scott Dixon. Jeez Louise. No wonder they got. What the heck was that?
I like him.
Oh,
Scott Dixon.
who? Oh, I see. Okay.
I like you too, but
Hey, I like Scott too. He's a good dude, and he's a great driver.
Yeah, that's good. It will be interesting. I'm curious as to, you probably, I would assume when you do road testing, you probably do it at Barber, I would think, because you can't go down to St. Pete and run. Traffic lights would stop you, and
A lot of winter testing we do out. A lot of it we can do Sebring and Homestead. That's generally a pretty good place to go over the winter. One of the few places you really can over the winter run cars. Yeah, and Barber's an option as well if it's not too cold.
well, I mean, come on, it's in Alabama, it's in Birmingham. It doesn't get colder, does it?
I think you'd be surprised
Yeah.
sometimes. Sometimes around December, January, it can get pretty chilly there.
Oh, well, you're ready. I am really pleased and impressed with what you've accomplished in your first couple of years in the Road to Indy program, then moving up so quickly to IndyCar. You got the right driver, I think, to do it with, and you're teaming up with a group of guys that know what they're doing. They're championship winners. They understand what it takes to win, because Al has won, obviously, and he's got to be a good guy to lean on, because I'm sure he'll, if the drivers need any help, or how do we do this? They say, well, there's a lot of road courses. He was a pretty good road racer. I was disappointed he didn't go to Formula One.
Yeah, and I mean having Al around is huge, especially with two drivers that are so young. People are like, well, they're two rookie drivers. How will they do? Well, having Al Unser Jr. around is a great start. So he's vital, I think, in our process moving forward with these two young guys. So I'm excited.
And, well, you should be. I think it's a good move, and I'm looking forward to when the first green flag drops, seeing how nervous you're going to be. I know how nervous I'd be.
I hope the cameras don't pick that up. Don't know if I'll have any fingernails left after.
Well, I tell you what, I appreciate you saying you would be here when something happened, and as soon as you're available, you are here. And I appreciate, I know these people were, when they said, wow, is he here? All right. How did you get him? I said, I did it the old-fashioned way. I asked. And he's got a PR gal that said, yeah, we'll make it happen. And she did. So thank Liz for me. And thanks for being here.
All right,
Look for the new Harding Steinbrenner team. And here's the youngest owner in IndyCar history, Mr. George Michael Steinbrenner IV.
Thanks for having me again, Don.
My next guest is all excited to get here, but in the meantime, I'm going to tell you that Sam Pierce Chevrolet is in Daleville, Indiana, and you got to come to the country, which is where Daleville is, to get the best prices. Sam is always rated at the top for customer satisfaction, and when you deal with him, you will find out why, because he never stands behind you when he sells you a car. He stands right alongside you. And all you do is take I-69 North to exit 234, exit east 1 mile, and you'll see him on the right. You can't miss him. Are you interested in finding out why these guys and gals like driving Indy cars? Well, you can find out very easily by taking a ride in the Indy Racing Experience 2-seater. You can call the office to get find a date. Look on their website, IndyRacingExperience.com. Find a date that works for you. You can call the office and talk to Shonda. The number is 317-243-7171, or you can book your ride online and either tell Shonda or put in the promo box online SJ1, you get a 50% discount. That's a two-seater Indy racing experience. You'll love it. It's great. It's exciting. It's fun. And you'll say, gee whiz, now I know why they like all this. It is a time to look for insurance for your home, your car, or your commercial property. I would do what everybody, a lot of people have done. It's called VP Insurance in Speedway. Mike Pardee will take care of you. He'll give you a quote, and you might find you get better price, more coverage for less money. So give Mike a call. His number is 317-248-0070. Get a quote. Mike is located at 5004 West 16th Street in Speedway. You can stop by his office and talk to him, or give him a call. The number is 317-248-0070. And if you are a vintage car buff, I highly recommend the Vintage Racing Quarterly. SVRA puts it out. It's a great magazine, first class, and you'll love it. You'll find a lot of the cars that you knew when you were first hooked on racing are still out. They're owned by others, and they're on the racetrack running. You can go to svra.com and subscribe to the Vintage Racing Quarterly. You will be glad you did, trust me. And the last event for SVRA will be November 1st to the 4th at the Circuit of America down in Austin, Texas. So if you're anywhere in the area, make sure you get there and try it. It is absolutely a phenomenal track and a great group of people that run the organization. You'll love it. My next guest now is a gentleman, and I use the gentleman term rather lightly, of course. He is the Director of Development and Partnerships for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Foundation Incorporated, which is the Indiana Museum, Motorsports Museum. A lot of things have changed with the turnover that's there, and we're going to find out what, why, and what's up next. The current event exhibit that's still there for a little bit is the Amazing Unsers, but that's going to change in the next couple of weeks. And I think they're going to put a stand-up of Howdy Bell there as one of the attractions.
No, it's actually just going to be Howdy.
You'll have to put a stick through the back of the tape or he'll collapse on you.
Wow.
This gentleman has been around. He was a member of the 500 Festival for a number of years, and the museum needed help, and they called help, and he said, me. Please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Dave Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me back, Don.
Well, I'll tell you what. Betsy sent me a check, and I said, okay, all right.
I know, I was listening to all your announcements, and I'm like, we got to get his sponsorship guy to help us fund the museum. We'd have a new building in no time, because, I mean, you're booked up solid.
These are free meals and free rides.
Haircuts?
Well, I don't need any very often, so that's not it. Besides that, there is an advantage. Our granddaughter got married in Florida this weekend, and the groom's father is Chrome Dome, like my IT guy back here. So I went up to him and I said, I was told to talk to you and get some advice. He said, what's that? I said, who does your hair? He said, I do every other day. So that ended that conversation. So since the new regime, and I don't mean that derogatory or anything, but since the new people have come in, things have changed at the museum. To my knowledge, they never had exhibits like have been taking place now with A.J. Foyt, Roger Penske, the Amazing Unser display, and the next one coming up, I think, the first part of November. That's a new twist, and it seems like when I go over there, it does well. It's done well for you.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you said that we're going to be changing here in a few weeks, because that hasn't always been the case, and I think that was largely by design. I mean, if you think about the collection the museum has was basically Mr. Holman's collection, and when he bought the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Ray Haroon was alive, and the Marmon Wasp was a 34-year-old car. It's like picking up an 82 Buick, right?
I got a 97.
So it's close, right? And Wilbur Shaw and all these guys are alive, and they're building their, as Bill knows, I mean, these guys are building cars in garages, not huge race shops. And when they start getting beat, they're in the way. And for me, it's history. For them, it's Tuesday. That's a car they raced week in, week out, and it's in the way. And you go, Tony, and if you go to Terre Haute, the Holman family was incredibly generous. And if you buy the track, you've got money from before, and they've always had a foundation out there to be supportive And for many years, that's where the collection lived, is in that Holman Foundation. You may remember the auction a couple years ago that involved the carousel horses. The belief, our thought was, at some point there was discussion or thoughts of a theme park potentially on some of the land, and now you can see that carousel is no longer stashed in the basement in parts. It's up and running at Ray Skillman's shop. We were down there for the IRMA event a couple weeks ago, and there are people riding around on it. So the collection was always to be presented, and you had the opportunity to come see these incredible pieces that were basically part of a private collection. And then 10, 15 years ago, that foundation moves to a public 501c3 outside of family ownership, outside of corporate ownership, and managed by a separate board of directors. Well, but it's inside the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and nobody knows the difference. And if you look at any other comparable 501c3s, like a zoo or an art museum or a symphony, they have to worry about how much revenue they have to pay the light bill, and the way to bring people in at $10 or whatever it is to give them another reason. The Louvre doesn't sit here and say, still have the Mona Lisa, Paris, come on in, give us the money. We've always had the Borg Warner, we've always had the Marmon Wasp. So what's the programming that we can start doing? And I think during that time it worked out so well, because look where IndyCar was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. You come in, the people who came in, they knew all about it. And you look at, there's kind of a generation now that kind of missed some of that, missed being a part of that. And I think what we've kind of done at the same time is start to tell stories that matter and start to put things in perspective. And one of the things you may have seen recently on Racer is that we're going for a technology grant. We've been offered a matching grant by the Dyson Foundation for $30,000 to improve the technology. How about this? 3 years ago, a museum of things that are known for their innovation, speed, and movement was in a museum where nothing moved. No video screens. The audio, I love Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons, but right now the audio that you listen to, it could be racing, right? The old Sid Collins. And so we hadn't always told the stories well, because everybody who came in knew it already. So changing programming is an essential piece of what museums did, and I think for so long that was never the priority. And I think in recent years, if you see what's happened at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and how much they've invested in the property and programming and the air race, lights at the Brickyard, the Rolling Stones, whether you like them or not, this is a business. And if the Indy 500 could live on the Indy 500 alone, it would do so. If the museum was fine to leave the cars where they were and people were flooding in and we could pay the light bill, we wouldn't change a thing. But that's not the reality any of us live in, and the reality is we've been able to improve that by doing a better job with programming and making more relevant content to people that people want to see, and telling stories better. And the track's done the same thing, and so we got to catch up. And it's only been in the last 3 years or so that they've started to hire people with different backgrounds, like actually in curatorial sciences, which apparently you're supposed to wear gloves if you touch like a 1911 ticket. But if it's in your way, you just move it and put it back in the shoebox, right? Because when the Holmans had it, much like these Wilbur Shaw and the Racers, it was just Tuesday, and it was their ticket. It wasn't really. If you come to the museum today, they're now putting LED lights in the display cases. You know why? Because they're the exact same lights that were there when the building was built in 1977. And it fades programs and paper. So today they're putting in, you were there today, you saw they're putting all new lights in the case. So now if someone donates something, we can actually take great care of it and actually be able to preserve it and actually be able to put it on display for fans to see something that they wouldn't normally get to see, because we have to have it in a dark vault. So now we can start to share content, and maybe somebody pays $10 to come see that again, and I'll buy another light bulb. And I'll put something else out, and you'll come back next week. And then you'll decide a membership is better because you're paying $10 so much to come in, and then you'll get a discount to see Sam Schmidt or Donald Davidson. So I'm really excited that the staffing, a PR and communications professional, a philanthropy membership professional, curatorial professionals, that we're trying to invest in the thing that we all love by bringing people with backgrounds to do that. Sucker, one question. I got that 10 minutes off the books.
Yeah, but see, there's one problem with that. Howdy knew it all, and he dozed off over there.
I'm sure he's a member, and I let members do that.
Who, Tight Pockets back there? Well, I hope your lifetime, how much time you got left? Oh, I'm only kidding, Howdy. He and I, oh, shut up. What the hell did you bring her for? Since you have arrived and since Betsy has arrived and the new people have arrived, as I said, you've got new exhibits and gotten a lot of attention for it, and I think it's probably boosted your gate, so to speak, people through the door. Now the Amazing Unsers are in for another week or two, and then it changes. What's next?
I'm so glad you asked.
I have a note right here. It says,
ask
him what's
Dave.
Next.
Well, for those of you, I know you guys are a great fan base and have been kind of watching, you'll notice that when we come into the spring and May, it's been Team Penske 50th anniversary exhibit, and then AJ Foyt, a legendary exhibition, and right now, the Amazing Unsers. But I think the exhibits that we've had in between those are some of the best we've ever done. During Indiana's bicentennial, we did Indiana automobiles, passenger cars that were made here in Indiana, and the reason Indiana was such a huge part of automotive manufacturing and evolution was because the test track was here. You couldn't get on a highway or a wind tunnel and test and go 3,000 miles, to see when your brakes might fail. And so the Auburns, Cords, Duesenbergs, Marmon, Stutz, all of those automotive manufacturers were here because this was a track that you could rent and test your design. So having cars that were manufactured in Indiana specifically because of the track was a relevant, topical, and different programming. And when you've got Augie Duesenberg's personal Duesenberg with his initials driven on, it should be upstairs. It doesn't always fit in the building we have around the Indy 500 stuff, but someone would want to pay $10 to come see that, right? And so that brought new people in. Then in between the next time, when we had the winter, we did Incredible Engines of the Indy 500, where we actually had, took the bodywork off the Cummins that went all 500 miles without a pit stop, took the bodywork off the first rear engine car, which was actually in the 30s, right? And the Novi, which maybe isn't always on display, but now you can actually see the engine, and created a tablet that you could actually hear what they sounded like. I never heard a Novi engine in my lifetime. But you ask anybody who did to tell you about it, and they go, oh my gosh. So now you're looking at the Novi engine and you can hear it. Let's put it in perspective. And oh, by the way, Duke Nayland's son, would work for us part-time. How cool is that? So, and that got engineers, gearheads, people who understood how things worked, and then it also educated people like me, who I'm a grown man, and Bill, I'm going to deny it. Well, I can't deny it because now it's on tape and it's in front of you people. I don't know how an engine works. I'm a grown man. Don't know it. Something's wrong. I give it to a guy. I come back hours later. I pay more money than I think I should, and it works fine. I don't know what happens in the middle. I did not grow up with my dad working underneath the hood. I just didn't.
I know how engines work. Put a key in, turn it, it starts.
Yeah. Well, but what do they talk about with IndyCar, about the manufacturer, Chevy versus Honda? What are they talking about in F1? One of the big things they've been talking about in IndyCar is getting a third engine manufacturer. Guys were building these. Sonny Meyer, hey Sonny, how you doing? Good to see you again, Sue. It's great. The Meyer Drake Offenhauser, are you kidding me? So having an Offenhauser parts petting zoo so kids can actually come in, how about that? They can actually touch something is good. And your original question is, what's the next exhibit? But I think I'm super excited about the passenger cars that we did a few years ago, the incredible engines, getting into STEM and talking about the engines. And I'm incredibly excited about the next one, which is Who's Your Thunder? Indiana's Short Track Heritage, which will be probably the largest exhibit we've done in terms of number of cars, because they're a little smaller and you can fit more. But if you look at the history of the track and the fact that, you'd see AJ Foyt in a small dirt track on Saturday before racing for the Big Crown on Sunday, those guys were driving everything. And the short track racers, we just spent an hour with Dave Darland today. He brought the first quarter midget he ever drove, started when he was, I think, 4, illegally, a little more than 5, 7. And Tony Stewart, Brian Clausen, let me read the list. Levi Jones, Steve Butler, Eric Gordon, Pancho Carter, Steve Kinzer, Mel Kenyon, the Elliott family, Bigelow, Hewitt. I mean, they are guys who are just racing gods, right? And and a lot of them have a history with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And there is, Troy Ruttman, the youngest winner. You talk about George Michael Steinbrenner being the youngest owner. The youngest winner won in the last dirt car to win the Indy 500. There's a tie-in there. So having a short track dedicated exhibit, I think, with all of those fan bases, Cody Swanson and Rich Vogler, Ryan Newman, Jeff Gordon, Jack Hewitt. These are all people whose stories should be told and should be recognized for their racing. And I think we've been able to work with a lot of the families and a lot of the we were out at Bob East's place and getting the first car he built for Stan Fox, to have that on display. And so it's going to be, I think it's going to be a great exhibit, and it's a great story. And going back to my ignorance on engines, not so sure I could have told you the difference between a sprint and a midget, right? I grew up coming in the Indy 500 and following IndyCar racing. I blame my father, which hopefully you won't see this because he's somewhere in South Florida, but he didn't take me to the fairgrounds, jerk. But he raised a passionate son for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar racing. And so I went out to the BC 39, and I was going to Terre Haute, except it rained this past Friday. Kokomo's next week. If we can get more people to be fans of any type of racing, and short track in particular, and if you came to see the Indiana automobiles, we had a huge map that showed all the cities and towns that had an Indiana automotive manufacturer. And we're going to do the same thing with show all the cities and towns in Indiana that had a racetrack in the past and that has a racetrack today. And I think people will see that you're probably only 30 minutes from a race on any given weekend if you live in the Hoosier State. And if and you can like the Cubs or the Yankees and like baseball, but the Indians is a pretty nice way to spend an evening here in Indianapolis, isn't it? If you like racing, you can go see racing whenever. And I think that's part of our responsibility to be able to do that. And I think by having this amazing collection, which probably, even the Sprint Car Hall of Fame, I don't think there'll be a better collection of vehicles, cars, memorabilia from personal collections and personal involvement from these folks who deserve their time in our space.
Are you getting cars from Tom Bigelow and Pancho and Jack Hewitt? Have they all got cars that have got stashed and had around because they're so proud of them? They're going to bring them in?
We have gone and found cars for just about everybody to represent them. And I think one of the really interesting things is we've been focused on telling about the people, and the cars are almost props. When you see the Pennzoil Chaparral from 1980, you think about Johnny Rutherford. The car sort of defines, you just go, that's Johnny Rutherford, right? But all these guys would get into anything, any different cars, and the length of the career. I mean, Dave Darland's been doing this for 34 years. So what is the iconic Pennzoil Chaparral for Dave Darland? Kind of hard to pick. And so having his first one, we actually have his BC 39 car. We've got Brady Bacon's car, hopefully, and Zeb Wise from the inaugural BC 39. We've gotten support to do this from Driven to Save Lives as a sponsor. Toyota came on as a sponsor, and Hoosier Racing Tire came on. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to build a turn inside the glass room there and throw some dirt on it and make it and set the cars up on a little platform to make it look like they're going around the corner, and the dirt's flying, right? And so, okay, that costs $5,000. It costs $10,000 if we'd actually got it from a place that does that, but you find two guys who are willing to work on the evenings and weekends that you trust that are going to do it, and that invests in the programming, which is what a zoo, a symphony, and an art museum would do, is they'd invest in their programming, they'd change it up, and then maybe you come spend $10 because you see something you haven't seen before, right? And the other, if you've been to the Amazing Unsers, you're going to love this, suckers, you still got to all come. There's a huge banner, 66-foot wall, 14-foot tall, 66 feet long, right? All on Pikes Peak at the long end of the building there, right? That whole banner cost $1,000, but it covered up that 1977 wall, right? So it made it look different. So what we'll do, we're going to try this, so don't hold, record it again. Don't hold me to this. I reserve the right to retract this based upon success. Is flip that so it's now white like that. I got two projectors for another exhibit, and I'm going to put somebody way better than me, on the left side for about 21 feet of it is a history video showing short track racing through probably the last 60 years, black and white footage up through the 80s, and then on the right side, 20 feet by 14, the 5-minute USAC highlight of the BC 39. You know, we talked about not having motion or speed or showing anything that moves, so when you come in, you know, and then logo and thanks to your sponsors and museum and give us money in the middle, static, but you've got two huge, you know, history video and BC 39. You come in and you see, and you put it in perspective. How do you, and you see the map of where racing might be. How do you not want to do that? And so, you know, all that stuff we're trying to get support to be able to invest in, and that's where something like the Dyson grant for technology buys projectors, you know, and then we can do it and pay for the editing and that sort of thing. So I think Hoosier Thunder is going to be awesome.
How many cars do you expect there?
I think we're going to have close to 45. We might get close to 50 because it keeps growing, and then, you know, it was a great discussion to see who kind of makes the, you know, who we can include, you know, and what's the definition of Hoosier racer, you know, but when you look at the list and you think of Indiana short track racing, you can't argue with any of them. And we also want to get into the builders as well. You know, there's a lot of builders, and you know, I know we've been out to the Grant King shop, and want to make sure we're running Steve Stapp and all those folks, you know, Bob East. I mean, this is a community of people, and everybody that, you know, I tell this to kids all the time when they talk about racing. You know, you talk about a band, and after you see a great concert, everybody goes, "Wow, that lead singer was great." Well, did you not notice the guitar and the drums, and did you not know the guys who set up the sets and did the pyrotechnics and got the lighting to work? The lead singer stands there. The driver is the most conspicuous person on that team, but anybody who's ever won in racing will tell you it is a team. And so, how do we get more people involved with that, right? So those builders and those people are just iconic in their own right.
Are you going to have any of them come in on certain occasions and either be available to chat with or give a presentation of some sort?
Yep. I think one of the things, if you've kind of been watching, is, again, giving people a reason to come to the museum. Is we've had this past year and a half or so a distinguished speaker series that has included most recently Donald Davidson, Ari Leyendyke did one. If in May it was Al Jr. and Bobby Unser Jr., and that was like watching somebody on a tightrope, watching 4 stories up, which is always great. So coming up in December, actually, I think we just announced it, is Sam Schmidt will be the one on Thursday, December 6th. So I think we're talking to a number of the significant folks, and we've gotten very positive feedback. So expect to see a couple events where there'll be some of those drivers available. The other thing we're doing is for not everybody can make after hours, is we started doing Fuel Up Fridays, which is just an hour in the morning on Fridays. We've had Jack Harvey and Willie T. Ribbs just come sit, you know, to limit it to 25 members in a small environment. Zach Veach is coming up next Friday. So that's the type of thing where we could get a lot of these folks to participate, and they're all great. They've got such a great fan base. They're really, Dave Darland, the people's champion, my gosh. And he would sit there for 2 hours, and so we definitely want to do that.
Well, I think, this is great, but Zach Veach has never driven on the dirt. He fell down in the dirt a couple times. I saw him. But I would be looking to get
the dirt exhibit is not open yet. Zach is on October 26th. The exhibit is not until November 8th.
That's what I wanted to get through.
So I was going chronologically.
Okay.
Zach?
Why did you make that? Because we were talking about short tracks, and all of a sudden you said he's coming. So now that's what.
Sorry. That was an example of some of the speaker series we do. I think we've had a positive commitment from a NASCAR champion. How about that?
Okay.
For some time in the winter.
Okay. Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart.
Nothing's on paper yet. We just, it's one of those things as we're getting in. People are, here's the great thing is all of these people have been so generous with their stuff. Dave came in today and was like, I didn't even know I had this old jacket, but my sister found it when she heard we were doing it, so she pulled it out. So I had to, wipe down, and it goes with my first quarter midget. This is so overdue. And such a great opportunity. We'll get some people.
I'm sure you will. But I wanted to split. Zach Veach didn't sound right. We were talking about the.
No, you're right. I blew it. I'm not a pro here, Don. I only show up once every few months.
I just wanted to look stupid.
You didn't signal before we. No, I didn't signal before I switched.
You know what you could do though? If you want a quiet afternoon where people could fall out of chairs snoozing, have Howdy show up.
I'm telling you, he's already working the museum. He's right there. People thought it was a cutout. It's him.
Really? Howard, I don't buy that for a minute. Oh, yeah. Cheryl, hit him for me, will you? Who sits down and puts this stuff together? Who sits down and you say, all right, what's next? We got the short track guys coming. Now what? What do we do in the spring? Or how long is this going to be? Or it comes in November. How long is it here?
Well, this is going to run all the way up through April 21st. So it's going to take up the same floor space as Penske and Foyt did. I mean, this is the big one for us. And we treat the content. People talk about big exhibits, small exhibits, and a lot of folks, and I understand it, think Indy 500 is the big one and the other ones are the small ones. But the reality is the amount of square footage and the amount of space and the amount of information is the same size. And the content changes, and and everything that we've done, it's big to somebody. And I think that there is... that's the main thing we want to do is create content that resonates and matters to people and gives them a reason to come in. So this will run through almost the end of April, and then we'll have a new one May 1st. So
and I assume you have been sitting around the conference room and have already got it set, and you're working on getting however.
We are working to see how to get that funded and what the right cars and content is. One of the things that we want to continue to do, like if you come to the museum now, we got the parts petting zoo and the engines exhibit paid for as part of their sponsorships, and once the exhibit was over, we moved the parts petting zoo and the big graphic that shows how an engine works, and it stays in the museum. And now we can do another thing. If you've been to the Amazing Unsers and you could get your picture taken on the yard of bricks with one of the Unsers, and it makes it look like you're there with them, and you can do like this, and you're in the day after shot with Bobby and the Eagle. Bob Jenkins looks like he was kissing Al Jr. in his 92 after shot, and it's hysterical. But that was paid for as part of that exhibit. Well, now it's pretty easy, now that it's there, to reskin it, and we've had a big check that pay to feature winner like they do at the end of at the short track races, and so now you can get your picture taken in this great winner circle type thing and email it to yourself, so it's interactive and it doesn't cost us much because it's already there. that platform that we're going to do for the short track exhibit will hopefully then be able to be used out in the middle of the space in the future, because right now it's a flat parking lot. So how do we create different views and heights, right? So we're always looking at what we can do with the next exhibit that continues to improve upon and build upon what we've done. And that involves, and one of the hard parts for us right now is, for 50 years, you saw the cars we owned. And so the challenge is right now, if you come see Unsers, there's Al Jr.'s Daytona 500 car. I think that's cool to see. I think if you're going to do an exhibit and there's Bobby's Pikes Peak car. So those are great to see. That gives you a reason to come back, because you've seen the Johnny Lightning cars because we own them. They've been there. They've been on the floor the whole time. So, but having these there, you might come see those. The bad news is it costs about $4,000 to get them here, because you don't just FedEx them. You got to throw them on a trailer. And so when you get a sponsor and donors, that's what it helps go towards. It goes towards programming, right? That's what a zoo. You give money to the zoo, and they start developing a new dolphin exhibit, and by gosh, look at this. We're in Kansas, and that's a dolphin. That's good, right? So when we look at major exhibits, it's what assets can we get that really want to do it. And so it's a part art, part science thing, and we don't have it nailed down yet, because we haven't necessarily done it much. But I think we're getting better, and I think people have been responding positively to our efforts, and I think they're seeing some good evolution in our space.
I want you to know, Cindy just committed $4,000. And she's on her thing going away. How am I going to pay for that? I said I'd do it. Well, I heard you say it.
Well, here's an easy way to do it. Get a license plate. Go to the BMV and get a license plate. Those go to the foundation. Those are not. And some of you, if you don't like the new license plate, I don't want to hear it. But you should get one, because if you've got an old one, now you need to have the new one, right? Because the old wing and wheel with the wreath and all of that. But that's one of the challenges, is that we're separate from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Corporation. We are separate from the Holman family ownership, and all the license plates you see, they're for not-for-profits. I'd argue whether major universities are not-for-profits, but when you see the schools, that's what you're seeing it for, and the money goes to support their organization, and that's one of the things that matters to us, and that's one of the things that we can say that this is a level of support. In fact, our new philanthropy person, everybody who was a plate holder months ago should have gotten a free ticket to the museum as a thank you, so that you know that you're supporting the foundation. So, yeah.
Now, in addition to the fact that if you don't have a key holder, we've got some up here for a race car. They're from the IndyCar Nation. Help yourself. There's some up there. And you have piles of things to pass out.
I know. I had terrible notes. I just was wanting to make sure I have to have visual cues, like the IMS restoration project of the Dan Gurney car that was painted like Jim Clark's car that we've always had. So part of it is programming, where we want to get that thing running. It should run. It's Dan Gurney's Indy 500 car. It shouldn't look like Clark's. It never was driven by Clark, and it should run. Dan Gurney's an American icon. He's an international racing icon. It's an historic thing. So a rear engine car, the engine ought to work. The fuel cells need to be replaced. It should be restored back to how it appeared when it ran in the Indy 500 in '63. That takes money, and we haven't had a history of getting grants, which we're now applying for, asking people to support us, and we have to give them a reason to support us, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. And the more we invest in ourselves, the better the output for fans and visitors. So we're getting there.
So as you leave tonight, there's handouts that he brought so you can see what's going on, who's doing what, where you can get your license plate. And you don't have to get one that was made by some guy in prison. Or are they still?
Those are extra.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, anyway.
And they come with a cigarette.
Well, the one I want is going to have a hacksaw just in case I go sometime. You brought along a lot of things to pass out to give people information. I think I like the new museum, the new things that they're doing. As you said, Holman had a huge collection of cars, and not only what's in the building, but there's stuff around all over the place. They've got an enormous collection of cars. But I think it's kind of interesting to see the cars that were built in Indiana and around Speedway years back. They're not making them here anymore, but they did at one time. And some of the stuff you're doing, showing what A.J. Foyt started, how he got here, what cars he drove, what he won with, which is about everything. I think the only thing he didn't win was a drag race that I'm aware of. So I think the museum is on the right track. I think they're doing the right thing, and anything we can do to help you is fine with me. So whatever doesn't disappear, leave it. We'll pass it out, get the word out. And
well, Don, you've always been great. And I always appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. I think our biggest challenge, is just awareness of what we're doing. So anytime we can pick up some advocates and someone can go, I haven't been there in years, it never changes. That one person can, in polite conversation, can go, yeah, that's not true.
Not anymore.
And so I think that's, I appreciate the kind words. We're trying.
Well, the only way you accomplish anything is to try. If you don't try, you'll never get anywhere. And I'm a walking, breathing example of that. I haven't gotten anywhere. Well, Fluffy's here, so I got that part of it done. And Howdy's still here, so.
I can say, and Howdy.
And the old Razzie is here. I want you to know what an executive he is. He's a Hall of Fame sprint car driver. He has now a personal driver. Holy smoke. I have to walk to get here, and he's got his own personal driver. I think there's a secret behind that, but I don't want to get into it. Because the old Razaroo, I've known him for maybe 30-some years, and some of the things we did back years ago, like pulling off, we were coming back from Mid-Ohio, I think, and the traffic was bad. And, of course, Eldon's not real good for sitting in traffic. I'm going to go down in the median in the grass. I'll pass all these people. I said, Eldon, I don't think it's a good idea. No problem. Bam! What the hell was that? We blew a tire. So here we are alongside the road, 10,000 cars lined up changing a tire in the dark.
I remember you.
Yeah, sure. Eldon was crawling around changing. I'm pointing. Anyway, and then, of course, there was all these experiences that we had with the car dealer from Minneapolis. Oh, jeez. Anyway. Back to the museum.
Leave the tab open and stories start in the back.
I appreciate your time, and I think what the staff is doing there and the people you brought in. I might question one, but that's not up to me. Nobody asked me, so nobody cares what I think. But if you ever need cars worked on, I know some people that are pretty good at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great community, and we're doing our best to be part of it. So
now I just noticed something that you are now doing. I don't know where you came up with this idea. Doing tours.
Yes. We've always had ones at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, of course, but we will be having our first shop tour with Schmidt-Peterson on November 1st, I believe. I think it's leaving from the museum and going to see their shop, which would be good. Again, going back to members and benefits and being able to have access to things. And I think there are so many great folks, like what Bill does at his shop, what Irma does. There are so many things to keep racing and the history top of mind. And I think it's great, particularly in the off season, to continue to give people access to those types of events because there's an appetite for it. And fans are fans, not just within the season. So anything that keeps up the exposure, it's good for everybody. And there are a lot of teams that make their home here. George probably could get a nice little piece of land in New York City if he wanted it, but he's in our community. I mean, I think that's a big deal. And I think we need to make sure that continues to thrive. And I think as people are involved with it, the more people that are involved and exposed to it, it's great.
Do you charge for this tour?
Well, of course we have to. Gas costs money.
Yeah, but to go.
You know, and that's,
You know, you could do it cheap. Go down and see Harding. It's just right around the corner.
well, yeah, we may get to that one, but you know, but that's the thing is it, you know, right now, who here's heard about the basement of the museum? How many people have actually seen it? All right. Well, it's now available. There's, you know, and it's one of the membership benefits. You know, it's $1,000. It's available at the $1,000 membership value, and everybody and you go, now it's actually priceless, right? 4 years ago, you had to know somebody.
And even that didn't always
People
help.
wouldn't, and so how you can't knock on the door and go to Schmidt Peterson. So, you know, if you're a member of the museum and it's $25, that's pretty good. And if you think, we wrestled with the price on the basement because it is priceless to a large degree, particularly when you get a tour and you get Donald or you get one of the hosts that can tell you all about the cars. But Colts are in season. How much is a good ticket to the Colts?
$38.
$350, right? For a 200 or 300 leveled seat, $350. Two of them is $700. Go to dinner beforehand, there's $800. Buy a bag of peanuts and some beers, there's $900. And you've spent 3 hours to watch a great NFL game. Okay, great, but you're $900, and or $1,000, and you're a member of the museum for a year. You get all this stuff, and you get to go to the basement with a buddy for an hour. It's not for everybody, but someone will turn 50. Someone will retire. Someone will do a bucket list thing. It gives access to people that maybe wouldn't have had it before. You know, we probably could have held it back and just sold it at $25,000 to the folks that fly in their planes here in May and don't know us. You know, that don't have an inn. And to be honest, the track doesn't have an inn. They don't own it. Unless they think there's a water leak, they got to have they're the landlords. The assets are ours. So now we're going to help them because our lease is pretty small, and there could be a lot of water leaks. But that's the cooperative approach to it. We want to have access and rise the tide for everybody.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think you've convinced me. You're going to have a short track show starting November, whatever it is.
November 8th.
8th.
Members Preview Night, November 7th.
Members Preview Night?
November 7th. In fact, I believe when I spoke to Mr. Pancho Carter here about a week or so ago, and he was gracious enough to say that he would say a few words, so we'll have some folks there.
Really? People want to come and listen to Pancho?
Absolutely.
Good guy.
You know, like Ed Carpenter, what, you got a short track champion who sat on the pole of the Indianapolis 500? That's not bad.
I sat on the pole, but I sat on it. I didn't drive to get there. I just sat in a car. I know it didn't. I thought of that after I said it. Anyway.
We can edit this later, right?
I don't care. Anyway, I want to thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. One of these days I'm going to chase Betsy down and get her side of the story. As Paul Harvey used to say, that now you know the other side of the story.
Well, thank you, Don, and thanks for everybody for coming out and supporting the show each and every week. It's an important part of the racing community, and thanks for everybody for their support.
And don't forget the Amazing Answers is only on there for another couple weeks. And then the short trackers, come get out and see it if you haven't. Before you leave, you want a keychain. It's in the shape of an IndyCar. Come up and get one. If you want any of the handouts that Dave has brought along to tell your friends and fans and fannies what's here, what's there, what's going to be there, stop and get all you want. And if anybody is interested in the gift and hobby show at the State Fairgrounds, the Christmas gift and hobby show, November 7th and 11th, come up and see me. I got a couple pair of tickets. I have some guests lined up for next week. I haven't got total commitment because there's still some are here and they're going, we're taking a little time off. I don't know why but that's the way it is. But we'll be here next week. So until next week, Don Kay saying thanks for being here. Thanks to George for being here. Thanks to Dave for being here. Until next week, good night. Thank you. Appreciate it. invited to the Poncho Talk.
To the openings?
Yeah.
Don't you always? You get invited to the openings?